Four, three, two, one. Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Showtime TV. I'm your host, Omar Rashada. As everyone knows, February is Black History Month, and this is the first program that we have in the Black History Month special. And it's going to be dealing with a topic that's been existing for years and years and years, way before we were all born. The colorism in the African American community. Let's take a look at colorism in the African American community in 2022, light skin and dark skin. So I have some very distinguished guests this evening. I have Lorenzo Hopkins, I have Queen Neak, I have Queen Rachelle Wilson, and I have Brother Glenn Bruce. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you all for being a guest.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, so basically what I want to do is just give a brief introduction for those in our audience. If you could just say who you are, and what do you do, and then we'll get into conversation. We'll start off with Glenn.
Hello, everybody. My name is Glenn Bruce. I'm the owner of a film, a multimedia company, In-House Manager Productions, specializing in TV commercials, film, electronic data, and do jingles. You guys gotta forgive me because I'm fresh off Dallas this year. I came straight to talk to you guys because this is important. So I'm glad I'm here to be with you guys.
Oh, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
All right, Lorenzo.
Lorenzo Hopkins is founder and CEO of North Star Coaching and Consulting, where I do a lot of work around trying to end violence in our communities.
All right, Nikki.
Queen.
You mean me?
Yeah, Queen Nikki.
All right. Yeah, no, not everybody knows, everybody knows the nickname. So I am Queen, Lena Queen. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and clinical somatic sexologist. I am a practicing sex therapist in the state of Delaware and the owner of Journey Wellness and Consulting Group.
All right, and make some intelligent noise. Go ahead and do your thing.
Thank you so much, Showtime, for having me. I appreciate the invitation, allowing me to join in. Many of your audience may already know me. I'm Rachelle Wilson, Make Some Intelligent Noise Justice Movement. I am the mother of the movement, and I am all things a multimedia social network, as well as I'm a radio talk show host on Saturdays. So that's what I do.
All right, so the first question I'm going to ask, look at the history of colorism. Yeah, light skin against dark skin. How did this happen? When did this happen? I mean, how did this become an issue? But it's not just the African American community; it's worldwide. As I've been doing research on this topic, colorism exists in Asia, in Africa. I mean, just in different parts of the world, but in particular in the African American community. Someone might want to throw a jab at you how we got started with this divisive type of concept.
Well, on this soil, when free Africans were trafficked to this soil, they talking about separating us, finding ways to separate and divide. And you're talking about the color of light skin in the house and the field and all those kind of things. So it really was a vice to divide. It all started and stemmed from that. And as we progressed, you remember doing civil rights, they had the brown bag test if you were lighter for voting rights and all those kind of things. So this thing come from way back from our inception on this continent.
And most importantly, colorism is the byproduct of sexual violence due to the transatlantic slave trade. Particularly looking at, again, what Lorenzo talked about, creating a hierarchy in proximity to whiteness. So we cannot talk about colorism without talking about white supremacy and colorism being a byproduct of sexual violence and violence in general, economic violence, violence in general, and its proximity to whiteness.
Anyone else want to chime in? Okay.
No,
All right,
I agree. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, okay. All right, I remember watching the video. Actually, several videos. Children were no more than 4, 5, 6-year-old. It was a doll test. They had a dark-skinned doll, brown-skinned doll. As you go down the road, the dolls were lighter and lighter. So they were asking all the African American kids, pretty much at least 98.8% of them, they said, "Which child is a bad child?" And they pointed to the darkest child. "Which child is the ugly child?" They pointed to the darkest child. One little girl, the moderator asked her, "Which doll is a pretty doll?" And she pointed to the lightest doll. And the moderator asked her, "Why is that the prettiest doll?" And she said because she's light skinned, but it was a white doll. So children from 4, 5, 6 years old, how did they come with the concept that light is better than dark skin at such a young age? I mean, because you're practically still a baby. I mean, how does this happen? How does this happen? Anybody?
It's a litany of ways, but you're talking about imaging. If you look at the images that the media put out, that any just put out, is always showing. If you look at it, black has always been looked at as bad. For example, if you look at TV even today, right? And if they tell you what the subject was black or something, you'll know that. But if they leave the color out, typically it's someone that's not of color. So if you start programming kids at a young age to believe they're bad, that's their social reality. So what starts to happen is when they get the images in their face, they can start pointing that out. They really don't know what it means, but based on their social reality, they start pointing out, oh, bad, good. They do know that. Kids know when something's hot, know when it's cold, know when something's bad and something's good. And
But-
the images are put out like that.
But can they get this concept from home in the community? Because let's face it, you know, you may live in a household where light might be looked at as better. Be in the community, oh, she pretty because she light skinned. Oh, he's so handsome, he's so light skinned with that curly hair. Yeah, it could come from the community.
It could. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sister.
Again, it comes from, I think also too, coming from a healing perspective, not just even a mental health perspective,
Right.
coming from a healing perspective, colorism, again, the impact of colorism was to create a racial caste system, whether you're talking about within the US or globally. So the impact of socialization in 2022 is a direct result of the sexual violence and the caste system that was developed in order to sustain the power of slavery, particularly within the US. And I'm going to speak to that from the US, understanding that it's a global concept.
Absolutely.
So when you're looking at the socialization, post slavery in the sense of, we know we still have the 13th Amendment, but like really understanding that in order to socialize people, to keep people understanding that racial caste system, you have to reward that system, right? So the reward is to understand that anything in proximity to African, anything in proximity to darkness is perceived as something bad, right? One of the main components that allowed that social default to take place was how marketing took place. When you think about the sexual stereotypes of Black women, when you think about the sexual stereotypes of Black men, and then you add colorism to those stereotypes, you create this hierarchy of good and bad, desirable and not desirable, and it impacts every facet of our life. So I think what's really important is not to be like, how did we get here, but more of why haven't we left?
Move on, right?
Not seeing the fact that, we are survivors of that catastrophe. We're survivors of that violence. Why are we not seeing with more compassion, even within ourselves? It's because still economically, people are still rewarded for proximity to that lightness, proximity to that whiteness. When you look at research, when it comes to Georgetown University and how white counterparts perceive light-skinned Black folks or light-skinned counterparts as less threatening. When you see in our justice system how dark-skinned individuals are more likely, 65% more likely to be arrested, have to understand that there's a reward system that we have internalized. And because of that reward system, you have this light skin versus dark skin.
That even goes into corporate America. You're absolutely right, because there's research out there plenty that shows who gets promoted, who gets a job or second interview and second look. It's fascinating, but if you look at the research, its data is out there and clear, the separation of who gets what.
Absolutely. And I think more conversations like these are absolutely positively necessary. The work that I do is also sexual healing work. And I think a lot of times we come from the sex negative space. It has a lot of taboo. And when people aren't feeling desirable, when people aren't feeling sexy, when people aren't feeling validated, we really have to look at how social and sexual defaults have come to be and come to pass, and how that informs our sense of self and our sense of self-worth.
I want to give each and one of you an opportunity to talk about your own personal experiences, maybe growing up or maybe even currently. I want to start off with Rachelle, then Glenn, Lorenzo, and Queen Lena. As a light-skinned person, as a light-skinned female, Rachelle, what was your experience like? Did you have conflict with dark-skinned African Americans? Were you stereotyped as one who thought, oh, she likes it, she thinks she all that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely, Showtime. I got to tell you, first and foremost, the Queen is on point. She took the words literally right out of my mouth in terms of the caste system, and the trauma informed. It can be a very traumatic experience as a young girl, a young boy growing up. And you don't fit in with this group of people. I couldn't fit in with that group of people. This group wanted to beat me up and fight me because they thought, oh, she's, she thinks she's cute. I can't tell you how many scuffles I've been in as a direct result of that. And I found that, white people, again, going back to what the Queen already has stated so eloquently, white people are less threatened, I find. If it's myself and a chocolate sister, and we both walk into a government building, the police or the security at the front gate, they are less willing to harass me than maybe my chocolate sister. And I do think that, it is traumatizing. And I think much like the Queen has already said, it's not so much how did we get here? I think all of us know how we got here. But I think the question is, how do we get out of here? Where do we go from here? And I really do want to emphasize the words trauma informed. We as generations have been taught, the light-skinned niggas, if I'm allowed to say that word, light-skinned niggas in the house, because they're less threatening, and we'll put the dark-skinned niggas out in the field. And with that mentality, generations we've grown up to thinking that that's the right way, but they're antiquated, and it is literally systemic racist and moral turpitude. So it's got to stop, but we got to look at the word trauma informed.
Right. Glenn,
Man,
your experience.
man, let me tell you something. Back in 1975, my mom lost her house, and we had to move into the projects. Okay. And when I got there, don't take it the wrong way, y'all. I got there, I looked at myself, I was like, damn, who turned off the lights? You know what I mean? When I got there, right? I went through every single emotion, and I agree with everybody on the panel, they're saying. But the thing about the white supremacy, it suppressed the separation with everybody, where I actually got punished for it. A lot of light-skinned people did back in the 70s. The first day I moved in my mom's new house, I got jumped. All my teeth got kicked out. I was 5 years old. Immediately the next day I got robbed. And I had to adjust to that very quickly and absorb all of that at a young age. So like Rachelle said, it's very traumatic. I've as grown up, whatever, you sometimes you get, how can I say, you get classified, believe it or not, whether it's subliminally or whether it's like right in your face. Like sometimes when a cop pull me over, they don't know what they got. They're like, oh, what you put me, boy, And then you have the situation where some dark-skinned people are having inhibitions about the white supremacy thing. And since they can't directly approach, say, the white supremacy as a whole, they take it on some light-skinned people. I've gone through that all my life. Even right now, I find it funny because now I have friends now that talk to me like a term of endearment. Hey, what's up, white boy? And hey, yellow man, and blah, 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 banana. I got a girlfriend called Banana, And I'm like, man, go ahead with that crap. But it was something that's a tragic observation that you have to absorb. And that's what, you know, I mean, I got so many experiences. I will be all day to listen to what I had to go through. I'm talking through employment, even right now in my business. When they see me, when I come up and do a big bit of, if I'm shooting a big film and they see it's me, there's all these classifications pop up. And it's sad.
So Glenn, let me ask you a follow-up question. Have you ever saw yourself being labeled as being soft because you're light skinned?
No, more like labeled as different, or sometimes I get perceived like if I'm in a corner store, if I'm waiting in line, they think, oh, I get privilege because I'm light skinned. That's not the case. Okay. And then there's other traits that some light skinned people got like me, you know. I have curly hair some days, you know, and some classifications, it's not everybody. I love my Black people. I'm always gonna be Black, okay? It's not everybody, but when there's a misconception that there's a certain privilege if you're light skinned versus you're dark skinned. And I don't believe that per se, but it exists. And that classification is like how Queen was saying, how Lorenzo was saying, different classifications. I don't think I perceived soft. I was a target, you know, and then the target was categorized along with the insults. You know, that white MF right there. You're a white boy, don't come on my block no more. I mean, I got jumped so many times. I've been harassed in school, harassed at work. And I just got to a point now where I start knocking people out. Then they say, oh yeah, that boy, he all right. You know what I mean? And that started happening. But
Can I inject here for a moment? Something that the brother has just stated that really brings to mind something I used to hear the elders sit around and talk about down in the South. And the phrase goes, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. And the truth of the matter truly is the deeper, richer melanin that you have, you know, you're so much healthier and more protected from all sorts of elements that lighter skinned people, the closer we get to white, are less and less protected. And I'm talking skin cancers, hair, you know, right down to the thick, rich, deep, curly hair of our darker, richer melanin people. That is to protect their head from the sun. You know, so the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. And I think that people such as myself, I know for a fact that I'm a very, very watered down version. I mean, I'm claiming my Black pride everywhere I go, but I am, and people like me, we are a watered down version of those sweet berries. And I just go back to what the sister Queen earlier said. We were a threat. The darker you are, the more threat that you are. But I think some of the most beautiful people in the universe are deep, rich, melanated, chocolate, you know, people. They're just gorgeous. Their skin is so beautiful, but you have to have eyes in order to be able to see that.
you know what? I want to say something real quick, right? The classification I'm talking about. Have any of you guys ever seen the movie Blade?
I haven't seen it.
Wesley Snipes?
Oh, yeah, I think I did. Yeah, okay.
All right, well, anyway, he's a vampire. It's called a Daywalker, where he doesn't have the same weaknesses. There's a line he said in that movie, I possess all their strengths, but none of their weaknesses. And that's the classification that some light-skinned people are classified as sometimes. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, oh yeah, well, he can walk through the door, all he can do is shave, he can get a job, whatever. And I don't have the weaknesses of being classified as being this jungle swinging Black person. They don't want to be employed or whatever, you know. And that's the classification. That's what I hate. I've come across that every day.
All right, Lorenzo, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to talk about your experience growing up. Did you, as one as it was brown skin, dark brown skin, did you have struggles growing up?
In the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, yeah, you heard that a lot. I mean, I think the sister Rachelle said it earlier, when you hear the elders or the grandparents saying things like that. But as I got older and start becoming more comfortable with who we are as a people and seeing the value, the social conditioning didn't stick as much because I start running in circles of our people of all hues that were brilliant, bright, and all those things. What I try to do, because my son is extremely dark, he's darker than me. But we often talk about, man, look how your skin is glistening. Look at this and all that, because he needs to understand, and our young girls and daughters need to understand that we come in a litany of colors and shades, and we're uniquely beautiful. Because when
Yes.
someone sees us, yes, the employer maybe feel left threatening, but let's not make a mistake about it. You are still a Black person to them.
Yes.
You know,
And until we understand that,
mhm.
once we understand that, and also put that value, and I think Queen said it so forcefully, that we have to get to the point where we're having these honest conversations, because if not, our generations of young girls and ladies are going to struggle with this over and what's beauty, because the magazines you get say this is beauty, the long hair is beautiful, this is beautiful. We have to tell our young sisters and our babies as much as possible, you are beautiful.
Yes.
We have to reinforce that over and over, because the world is not going to tell them that. Magazines don't show that more now, because you're starting to see some magazines of color doing that. But most of the standard in America, the beauty standard, either you're going to be white and real skinny, right?
Yep.
Light skin, or they can go extremely dark and get something from a young sister from sub-Saharan Africa. There's no in between. So we have to get to the point where that we are having these conversations, because I think through conversation, as Queen says, we start to grow and embrace each other versus pointing out those differences that really, if you think about it, we're still the same people. They're going to have the same struggles. I don't care if you're light or dark. Eventually, it's going to catch up and you're going to have the same struggles.
Yep.
So, Rachelle said something earlier about, I guess the darker skinned females looking at her and thinking she's cute and want to start some physical altercations. So someone asked Glenn and Lorenzo, it may not be a matter of the light skinned girl thinking she's cute. It may be the matter of us as males giving more attention to the light skinned woman, and then when we're leaving our dark skinned woman behind. I mean, so let's be honest. We as Black men, are we at fault, or as in terms of favoring a lighter skinned woman with Eurocentric features over the dark skinned woman with Black features?
Let me say
Well,
this first of all.
before
My wife.
I would like to
Okay.
interject, but because
Okay.
before we even go on and you like segue about personal experiences, let's talk about in this moment how you just skipped the dark skinned sister.
Oh, no,
Right?
no, no.
Right? So I think what we have to be able to recognize mindfully is how we affirm our folks. One, because there's so many things I wanted
Okay, I got you.
to talk about. So one, my personal experience.
Right.
Growing up a dark-skinned Black girl of African-American descent in the US, right? Who was also grew up, my father is retired military,
Right.
different experiences, right? But the one thing that I was always teased about was my darkness, right? I remember my mom not wanting me to be in the sun because I would be too dark. I remember growing up saying I was a dark-skinned version of my mother, right? I think even when I hear the language that we use, we still talk about ourselves the way white Americans talk about us, right? Food, texture. Colorism is one part of a conversation that we can't talk about without talking about texturism, good hair, bad hair, featureisms, nose, and the like body types and things of that nature.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
When we are talking about when you are, when you're inviting to have this conversation and we're having a healing centered conversation, yes, talking is one, but educating is the other. Otherwise, what we have a tendency to do is perpetuate the same things and talk in circles, right? There needs to be a way that we have to understand that that those of us who come from the continent of Africa, who are descendants from continent of Africa, primarily West Africa, and understand that Africa is 53 countries and a plethora of islands. It is up to us to be able to understand our source, right? And then like to have these layered conversations, because without sex positive, healing centered conversations, we end up keep talking about the same things. And if you're not mindful, you'll do what you just did, right? Which is to talk about, you know, the part of like the light skin thing, and you're not talking about the whole thing. And what just ended up happening is you didn't see me.
Okay.
You didn't see me. And if I don't have the wherewithal and the sense of self to take up space, then I'm going to be unseen. And like, that's what happens too often, whether it's in school spaces, professional spaces, or social spaces. You know, we are so quick to show our understanding of the situation instead of being in the situation to figure out what we understand.
So let me tell you, that was not intentional. Not intentional. I just get in the flow of the conversations. I would never do that to any guest, you know.
And Omar, I know that intentionally. I know intention versus impact, right? This is all with love, right? Intent,
Right.
but regardless of our intention, we have to be responsible for our impact.
And
And
I
when we're
think,
having
and also,
conversations about colorism or
and also
anything
think,
about,
Queen, that was
Yeah.
appropriate because it was a learning experience for us all and our listening audience. I do believe that. So thank you for enlightening us and sharing that. I appreciate you.
you're welcome,
Okay.
thank you. But go ahead,
Yeah.
fellas. Y'all got
All
it.
right, go ahead.
Let me say this, Omar. You asked a question. First, let me
Right,
say
right.
this.
Yeah, it was a follow-up question.
My wife of 27 years,
Mhm.
girlfriend of 30 plus, is a dark-skinned chocolate sister.
Right.
So you asked, do we buy into that? I'm not saying some men don't, but I don't chalk it up as. Let me share a conversation with my son. I had with my son years ago when he was in school. He was asked one time. I see he went to a dance and I saw him standing around these Caucasian girls. They were standing around him and they were like saying all this stuff. I'm like, him and his friends are like, son, you don't see any sisters? He said, Dad, the sisters that go to this school don't give us the time of day because we're not jocks, loud, and all those things. I said, are you serious? He said, no, we're lame to them. And I'm sitting there because I'm thinking like, dude, your mother's dark. What's going on? So when he enlightened me like that, I'm like, okay, do you try to talk to people? When he said, yeah, I do, but I get shot down. So I just wanted to say that piece when people say, is it someone choosing? I'm not saying some men do or don't, because I believe people do. Because if you're socially conditioned to believe what beauty is, I can see how young people will fall and people will fall for that and gravitate towards that. I've always had a propensity for darker skinned ladies. So do men do it? I can't speak for all men, but for me, I have an attraction to darker skinned sisters.
Right. You know, making
Nothing against light skinned sisters. It's just that my
Right.
preference at the time is my wife is darker skin.
Right. You know, making major news, particularly the African American community this week, was actress Thandie Newton. She played in a lot of films, I think, and she made a statement. She went on social media apologizing to the darker skinned females for taking their roles and taking their men. Glenn, you and I, we are in the entertainment field. You know, I'm an actor, you're a director, actor. So let me just ask you point blank. When you look at films, when you look at television, for example, the lead female who leads the attraction is more likely lighter skinned, Spanish, biracial, white, whatever. And you don't really see a lot of dark skinned females playing the lead interest role, a love role. Let me give you an example. I watch TV One quite a bit, and they show the old shows of Sanford and Son. And just about every single episode, I see Aunt Esther being the butt of the jokes. She is always talked about as being a gorilla, being unattractive simply because, as Queen says, she's dark skinned with black features. Because we got to talk about the black features as well, the wide noses, the big lips, and so on. But I remember seeing an episode with Lena Horne was on there, a lighter skinned female, and she was seen as, oh man, she's so beautiful, she's all this and that.
Right.
So in our entertainment field, how can we go about changing, putting the dark-skinned females as the love interest, you know, not showing them as being unattractive. You know, Leslie Jones, when she was in Ghostbusters, man, she was getting hit all kind of ways because they were calling her unattractive, black, and this, that, and the other. So I'm just saying, it just seemed like the playing field is just not equal when it comes to dark-skinned African-American females, if you will.
Yeah, well, it's from the beginning of time, it's supremacy. You remember back in the 70s and the 60s, every time a white woman will come on the screen, the saxophone will play, and she got to be the sexiest thing in the room. You know, that has been programmed for years. How we change that is to straight just be bold and put our sisters on a plateau. Simple as that. Like, you know, in my films, I do all the time. I put our sisters on a plateau. You know, not being racially segregated, nothing like that. It's just the fact, like you said, we do need to see more of those images. Like when you see people like look at Serena Williams and dark-skinned people we can look up to, we have to promote that more. We have to like facilitate that more, and that's the only way you can do it. Like you said, we can't just go from to be stagnated and just accept. This is how it's been all for like 50, 60 years. Just go ahead and do it. That's my solution. I mean, clean, cut, and dry.
Right. And you know, Rachelle, we talked about solutions. We talked about self-love. You was involved in an organization a while back, African Rites of Passage, which taught kids and adults to love themselves. You want to talk about your experience of being an African Rites of Passage? For those who are not aware, what was the organization about?
The African National Rites of Passage United Collective was an organization created a very, very long time ago, but the premise of it is pretty much in the title, a rites of passage. We know in those, in some of the countries in the continent of Africa, particularly the Ivory Coast of Africa, we know that there was always a rite of passage. The young boys would go with their fathers and uncles on the hunt for the lion or the cheetah or whatever the animal was, and women had to learn how to do particular things. And these were your rite of passages. When you reached a certain age, you had to sort of show yourself, prove yourself. And that is the concept that our organization took. I was a part of that for, maybe 12, 13, 14, 15 years. And the concept was to teach young girls by women how to live, how to love yourself, how to appreciate yourself, how to assert yourself, when to assert yourself, when to fall back. It was a rites of passage, and the men did the same thing with the boys over in another section of the building. And there would be times when the men and women would come together, or the little girls and little boys would have to do projects or assignments together, which taught them how to interact with, how does a woman interact with a man? The right way to do a thing. So I found that particular organization was amazing. I learned so much about myself, and there were a plethora, a litany, as the brother says, of various colors of us women. We ranged from, buttercream to chocolate chip. And we all worked together, and we had our own healing moments and self-love moments where we had to get through some tough conversations about those colorisms. But when working with young girls, it was always an intense focus for our little Black girls, our chocolate chip drops, that we had to give that extra love and boost of encouragement to, as the brother had already stated, to know that they were beautiful with their kinky hair and their dark skin and their wide nose and beautiful lips, you know? And so it was a journey, but one that I would never trade in a million years. I love doing it.
You know, Queen, I want to ask you, there are those who got to the point where they are just so dissatisfied with their dark skin that they bleach themselves. So from a psychological standpoint, that there are those who say that this is self-hate. What are your thoughts?
I think internalized racism is absolutely a thing. I don't think I would quantify it as self-hate. I think there is a lens of compassion that's missing with larger conversations when we talk about why, one, do those products exist to begin with? Two, you know, when we think about how people navigate spaces, the choices that people have to make are absolutely their own. I do know as a mental health provider that, you know, colorism impacts people. It impacts who they choose to marry. It impacts, you know, social mobility. It impacts self-esteem. It impacts economic mobility. You know, skin lightening has been rewarded. Again, a racial caste system. Skin lightening has been rewarded. So people who are looking for that reward externally will do something like that. To me, yes, is that a sign of healing that needs to occur? Absolutely. But it's just like anything else, consent 101, only if they feel so. You know, the impact of the sexual violence that the transatlantic slave trade has had is so ingrained. I don't know if there is any reversal, because there are always systems that will reward people who do such things. And it's not for me to judge but only to hold space if they so want to. Internalized racism, yes, but I won't qualify it as self-hatred.
Well, let me throw this question in the air. Once again, being in the entertainment field, we look at dark skin, because I think there is somewhat a difference in terms of being a dark-skinned male versus a dark-skinned, as opposed to being a dark-skinned female. For example, being in the entertainment field, once again, you know, you look at Morris Chestnut. He may be seen as a fine, sexy brother. Idris Elba, a fine, sexy brother. Denzel Washington, a fine, sexy brother. So it appears that, you know, a dark-skinned male, he is promoted, and he is seen as good looking, whereas a dark-skinned female, she may not get the same accolades. So Lorenzo or anyone else who wants to chime in, does the dark-skinned woman have it harder than the dark-skinned male? Bring your point of view.
I think when we compare who has it harder,
Yeah,
we lean more into the narrative of division.
No, it's not division. No, it's not division. It's just keeping it real. I mean, we keeping it real this show. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's just straight facts. You know, because I don't see dark-skinned females being appreciated like other females, you know, from other cultures with lighter skin and long hair. So that's the issue that we got to address. I mean, we just can't leave that blank.
And absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about, you know, that racial caste system, and not about who has it. Are there more opportunities? And also too, Morris Chestnut and how entertainment wise and how people are cast in reference to sexual stereotypes. The perception of who is going to be seen as more desirable on the screen that is going to keep the audience engaged.
Yep.
Right. So there is a psychology behind choosing, right, that actor selection, and that psychology is embedded in anti-Blackness and racism. You know, the fact that also too, let's think about, name someone who was a dark-skinned woman who's attractive.
I think on the original Fresh Prince of Will Smith show, Fresh Prince of Air. I think the original was so beautiful, but they took her off, and who they replaced her with? That's a problem.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying?
I think also too, right? Just like the quickness in which we like name
Thought
those
about
things that are sexually attractive to us.
You got
It's
Lapita.
not that they're not there. It is just that we've been socialized to not recall because, we haven't seen it. A dark-skinned I think dark-skinned Black men have more opportunities on screen because it just goes into again, who's fuckable or not.
Well, Lapita was named with People Magazine Most Beautiful Person, so that was something that was new that we rarely seen. So,
Right.
but like you said before, Lorenzo, she's from Africa, so she may be seen as a fetish, because the dark skin, extremely dark skin, like you said, that they may be more acceptable in terms of beauty wise.
And I think you just said something then that I think sometimes we put ourselves, not us, but society, the system, and us, we put ourselves in these pockets, right? Because today, I know she didn't mean anything by it. I was recognized by someone putting Black history and they wrote my bio and did those things. And a sister from Jamaica, she said, "Oh, wow, I'm Jamaican, but I'm still proud too." And in my mind was, you're still a sister. But again, I knew what she meant, but I find us compartmentalizing, putting ourselves in different, and society putting us in different pegs and making it more a competition versus we're brothers and sisters. And as I climb, you climb, as we climb. And I think sometimes, and I think Queen, I'm glad you brought that up, that Omar, she wasn't being argumentative. I think she was just pointing out that when we do that, you hear people say, well, the Black man got it easier, the Black man got it harder. And that's not bringing us anywhere closer to synergy, to the center of how do we make it better and how does representation matters to all of us, our little Black boys, little Black girls. And until we get to that point, right? Instead of pointing fingers, well, they got it easier than me, we only then do we lift each other up.
Well, no, I mean, it's just recognizing the fact that when we're talking about acceptance, when we're talking about Black beauty, I mean, it's promoted in terms of dark-skinned Black men, but I think it still needs some improvement in terms of dark-skinned Black woman. That's the point that was
No, absolutely. And like I think Queen said it also, she was like, look, what society says Black men, this is desirable, but is this person desirable? So the image of beauty has been put in our face for a long time, right?
Right. Yeah.
But can I jump in and just inject this very briefly? God rest his soul, Brother George Floyd. That brother, for whatever reason, God chose him to change the world. His death changed the world. As I watch television, and I don't do that very often, but every now and then I'll flip those channels, and I'm telling you, there's more Black commercials. There's more commercials with our beautiful Black people in it. We see more interracial relationships now with Black people. I cannot think of her name. She's absolutely stunning, beautiful, very chocolate chip drop. She does she's an actress that's done so many awards. She has so many awards, but now she's doing some kind of makeup commercial because she's worth it. And I can't think of her name. She's absolutely stunningly beautiful. If you look at her skin, it's magnificent. But I think that the death of George Floyd has changed a lot of that entertainment stigma in regards to colorism and who gets the part. And again, I really think the trauma of us as people from generations, the healing has to start with us in those intimate but maybe uncomfortable conversations where we talk to each other and love on ourselves and love on each other. Where the light-skinned sister has to talk with the chocolate sister, the buttercream and the chocolate, they need to get together and understand each other's perspective. Because it's tough for both of us. It really is. And I'm not trying to put a divide in anything, but it's really tough because at the end of the day, we're both Black women in America.
Absolutely. And, I think, and I agree with those points. I think being able to know too, that referring to a dark-skinned woman as a dark-skinned woman is not an insult. Right? But referring to me as a chocolate woman could be perceived so because it's almost a fetishization that happens. People want to consume buttercream, right? Like people want to consume us Oh man, I forgot my other point. But I think having these honest conversations, these healing conversations, being able to talk about where privilege resides, and not again that it's a both and conversation, not an either or, right? And being able to have those both and conversations. But going back to what Sister said about being trauma informed, it really is also too being in a place emotionally that we feel safe enough to have those conversations. And that's what trauma informedness is about. How do we create spaces that that allow that synergy to occur? Synergy doesn't occur without some type of alignment. Alignment doesn't occur with some type of movement, you know, some type of cleansing, some type of replenishing. Like, we need to be able to curate the healing spaces that we want in order to have these elevated conversations, knowing that they are uncomfortable, right? But they're going to be transformational. You know, we always talk about the crab in the barrel, and no one ever says that the barrel isn't supposed to be there.
You're right. Absolutely not. Why am I contained in a barrel? Why does that? What? Yeah.
Why does the barrel exist to begin with?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, so I just want to add more to what Sister Rachelle just said, and just like, yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
One
And
thing we
Sister
all,
Queen, I gotta call us chocolate chips and buttercreams and almond pecans, and you know, it's not for consumption, but it is to embrace. You know, I see it as embracing, you know, and maybe I'm
Ashe.
wrong and I need some mental
It's
counseling
not,
on
nope,
that.
No, no.
it's not about wrong.
No.
Nope, that's not even it. Nope, that's not what I meant by that. I love you, and that's not what I meant. I just meant also too, in that dialect, in the language that we use, right? Just understand that, because there are words of affirmation that we use with each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, absolutely, positively. And like, that's what makes Black culture so beautiful, is that we've been able to take our hardships and we've been able to really the resiliency out of those hardships and what we've been able to create. So by no means do I mean any false or anything bad by that. It's just also just for me to be mindful of having conversations that humanize our experiences, as well as harmonize, whatever. I'm done.
imagery and representation matters.
Ashe. Right.
Because think about it, right? I'm not trying to make this political, but do you imagine the power of the imagery of having the Obamas in the White House for 8 years with a dark-skinned sister as his wife? You had kids born for 8 years, and only thing they knew was a Black president. I lived 40 plus years before I turned 50 plus, and not see one. Could you imagine there were kids during that time from 1 to 8 only knew a Black family in the White House? If that isn't powerful, and we have an obligation when we do things and we have a platform to ensure that we are providing that imagery, because before a kid knows their intellectual prowess, they know what they see on TV. They know black and white. They know what beauty, and they know what stature is. So we have to ensure that no matter where we are in this space as a people, that we make room to ensure we're uplifting, because someone is watching us. Even on this platform today, there were times in this country that you wouldn't get 5 Black people on a show together, no matter what the hue was. Not alone a show with a brother owning it and running it. So we can't lose sight of that when we are doing this stuff. Yes, it's difficult, but if we're not willing to do the work, how can we expect our young people to do the work?
Right. You know, each and one of you, 4 of you have talents. You have your own pretty much business or organization or what you do. So I want to take this time to give you an opportunity to share with the audience in terms of what you do and how can they get involved with helping you or get involved participating in your project or get some counseling or whatever. Let's start off with Glenn. And a filmmaker, you got any projects that people can come and see or people can come and audition for?
We are recasting for our current movie called Blonde Fear. We probably won't start until springtime.
Okay.
Sci-fi horror picture. We're looking for a person to play a multitude of different characters. You can go check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/blindcreatormovie. You can see where our project is right now. But like I talked to you last time, Omar,
Mhm.
we kind of like in a holding pattern because of the COVID situation.
Right,
You
right.
got people that doesn't want to get vaccinated versus people that want to get vaccinated versus people that don't want to work with people that's not vaccinated and vice versa. So we're going through that stuff, but I think we're gonna work it through. Once again, that's facebook.com/Blonde Creator Movie. And we will be casting this spring.
Got you. All right, Lorenzo.
Can I defer to my sisters real quick?
Oh, okay,
You
okay.
mind?
Queen, you want to go next, Queen? I know you have your
Uh,
own counseling business and
Yeah, absolutely. So several projects. Again, I am the owner of Journey Wellness and Consulting Group, which is an outpatient mental health and sex therapy practice. I am not taking individual clients right now. I'm actually going to be through my nonprofit, the Whole Self Healing Institute, actually hosting pleasure workshops for those in their healing and professional workshops for those who want to understand more how to show up and be gender and queer affirming and racial affirming in their practice. So the two websites are journeywellnessdelaware.com and centeringourselves.org.
Queen, well, we mentioned, I want to stay with you for a moment. We mentioned trauma, and there are many of us who, for one reason or another, go through trauma. We may hold it in. We may see it as a stigma in terms of seeking counseling. So talk about the significance of, if you're going through some personal issues, the importance of seeing someone to be able to talk to you about it, get some therapeutic healing, if you will.
Absolutely. So trauma is defined as an impactful event that informs our ability to function when you think about your quality of life, right? The one thing I also want people to be mindful of, there's impactful events too that are also joyful. So both trauma and joy inform like how we show up in the world. Depending on our relationship to those two things, they're going to impact our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to others, whether we feel safe, whether we feel confident, whether we feel assertive, whether we feel like value and of worth. So trauma absolutely can inform our core wounds, our core needs, and our core desires. How we act for those things or how we don't act for those things, how we show up and take space, or how we shrink and we're quiet to other people. So the fact that trauma is not a weakness. I think a lot of times we've been socialized to think of trauma as a weakness or as something that sometimes we can control, and that can be very, very frustrating for people. Seeking professional help, therapy is part of healing. Therapy is probably not the only thing you'll need. Right. So I think also from this integrative mind, body, spirit perspective as well, understanding that healing is a continuous practice that's ongoing. So I invite people to really ask themselves the question of like, what is your relationship to joy? And what prevents you from activating and leaning into that joy? And if there are impactful events that have shown up in your life, there is blackbrowndelawaretherapist.com. There's cliniciansofcolor.com. There's a plethora of journeywellnessdelaware.com. There's a plethora of resources, as Sister Rachelle said, like, George Floyd's death has led to this increased conversation and this increased accessibility to having clinicians, providers, healers, energy healers, all sorts of healers that look like us, that come from our cultural context. So I invite people to seek those things or just to reach out to me if you don't know where to start.
Okay, great. Awesome. Rachelle Wilson, talking about Make Some Intelligent Noise. How can they help you out?
For those that know me and love me, you know how to reach me, you know what I do. I'm very heavily involved with our public servants, our elected officials. I really engage very heavily with them on the issues that affect us, particularly the family from a judicial perspective. I encourage everyone, at all times, please know who the representatives are in your district and do not find an excuse and do not be afraid to shoot them an email and let them know your perspective on the issues that are most important or most passionate to you. And again, let us always let Attorney General Kathy Jennings, and Governor John Carney, or whoever is the Attorney General, whoever is the governor, at least here in the state of Delaware, let's let them know that we want more judicial accountability in the courtroom for our Black and brown sons and daughters.
Okay.
Cool.
Lorenzo, do you want to say something about your business?
Yeah, North Star Consulting, our mission is to build and or enhance the capacity of communities, institutes of higher learning, K through 12 schools, nonprofits, to be able to deal with and prevent violence, unnecessary, senseless violence. I'm a retired military veteran. I've spent almost 30 years, 3 decades in law enforcement, working in Washington, D.C., working in the city of Wilmington, and I've seen too much trauma and hurt among our communities. And my goal, the rest of my life, my mission is to try to heal some of that, try to create some healing, and to try to teach schools and how do you deal with our kids, because our kids go to school and are forced to learn after seeing a traumatic event, and it's not dealt with. And people go on, like if a kid is killed in a car accident, they have crisis therapists on campus the next day. But if Johnny's at 10 or 8 or 5, sees his uncle or someone in the community get murdered, Johnny expected to dust himself off, or Susie go to school and learn in a classroom after experiencing trauma the very next day. We have to do better. So my goal is to try to educate schools, nonprofits, churches, and everyone about how do we address and deal with the violence in our community, and how do we try to make our children whole, our young people.
Right. All right. Oh.
Not sure if we're aware to that point. Sorry, thank you, Showtime. To that point, the state of Delaware has a mental health grant called Project Thrive. So if you are aware of kids who have experienced trauma, who need mental health support, it's impacting their attendance, their grades, and things of that nature. The quickest way is really to dial 211, and they'll connect you to Project Thrive providers, Journey Wellness being one of them. But I am seeing that there are the funding going to mental health and trauma. But again, there's still room to grow. But that Project Thrive grant is definitely available to connect people, and telehealth services have become more accessible as well.
Right. It's so building those relationships. Right. It's just building those relationships, because they're typically terrible relationships between schools and communities based on some of the parents had problems in school. And we have to bridge that gap. Who's going to tell the schools that this happened on this street, and you have 10 kids within a mile radius that live there? How do we address those kids on Monday? So my goal is really to build those relationships and connection with the community, so those kids aren't the victim of someone's bad school experience, that they don't get the help they need in school.
I'll definitely be reaching out to you.
Okay, so before we close out, I know we talked about solutions, how we can, end colorism in our community, or at least reduce it. So I want to give anyone the opportunity to have any closing comments on how can we reduce or end colorism, what needs to be done, what needs to be said, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So before we close out, anybody wants to go, they can.
I don't want to repeat what Queen said. I'm gonna let her deal with that. But we know what you said. You put it pretty profoundly about educating and doing the work. But you have to understand, and we all need to understand, that representation matters. And whatever we do, our job is to leave a better legacy in this world than when we found it. If we allow this thing to perpetuate itself further, we're the elders now. We're not doing our job. So we have to get to the point where we have to end it, so our next generations don't have to go through this, no matter what that is. If that means platforms like this and seeing us dialogue, if that means volunteering at the school so they can see us unified together, we have to put in the work so our children doesn't have to suffer for the generations of stuff that we refuse to deal with.
All right, so if anyone else wants, if not, then we'll close out. All right, so I'll just thank everyone for joining in for this special edition of Showtime TV Black History Month special. You're all wonderful guests. For those who are watching, please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you all. You guys you ladies and gentlemen, have a good week. God bless. Happy Black History Month. Peace.
Nice meeting everyone. Thank you.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
Black History every day, 365 Black.
Listen.
Yes. Go ahead, Queen.
Black on black on black on black, black on black on black on black, all day.
All right, take care, everybody.